Hey Floss Tube, this is Brian. Welcome back. This is my 23rd Floss Tube video, and it will be an update of my stitching for November and December 2017. First of all, I want to welcome you back. If you are new, I would like to welcome you. I hope that you enjoy the things that I have to show you today. If you're returning, thanks. I appreciate you coming back and watching my videos. First of all, I would like to thank everybody for liking, commenting, and subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for all of your comments. I especially enjoyed the comments that you left with my last video. As you remember, in my last video, I asked for your input as to which cross-stitch project I should start for Christmas, and I really enjoyed all of your comments, and I enjoyed everything that you had to say. I was really quite impressed, not only because you all responded, but also because you not only gave your vote as to which project you thought I should start, but you also basically argued your point and gave me the reasons why you thought that should be. And I really enjoyed reading all of your comments and hearing from you. In a little bit, we'll talk about that, and I'll tell you which project won and which project I decided to start. Also, before we really get going, I just want to do a shout out. I'd like to shout out Caroline at Off the Grid Needle Arts. I'm sure you have all been watching her. I have really come to enjoy her Fridays Off the Grid Stitch With Me videos. I enjoy listening to her as I stitch. And it's enough to make me want to do some Stitch With Me videos. I will have to figure out how to do that because I stitch in the evenings and my house is not very quiet in the evenings. There is all sorts of activity going on, and it would be hard. It's kind of hard for me to try to film anything in the evenings, especially since I stitch at our kitchen table, which is right in the middle of all the action. To start off with, I thought that I would share with you a couple of pieces that I have finished that I haven't shown you before. These are Christmas projects, and I thought it would be fun for you to see what I've stitched Christmas-wise in the past. The first one that I want to show you is a project. This was the second piece that I actually stitched, so it's been around for quite a while. It was a design that was in the Better Homes and Gardens Cross Stitch Christmas magazine. It was in the 1994 magazine, and it's this, and it's called Santa's List. This was actually the cover piece for that magazine. It's designed by a lady named Emmer. And I really enjoyed stitching this. I really liked it. And as I say, this was the second piece that I stitched. You can see I used masking tape on the edges. That's because that's what my wife taught me how to do. I don't do that anymore, of course. This is a good example of why you don't do that. I mean, this is like, what, 1994, 23 years old, and the tape has gotten all brittle and it's pulling away, and there's a whole bunch of gunk underneath it on the fabric. But another thing about this piece is that I stitched it using a hoop. My wife taught me to stitch using a hoop, and I didn't know to be really careful about keeping my hands clean. And so there's marks where the hoop was, where I actually held the hoop with the fabric. So yeah, but other than that, I really like it. The thing that I like the most about it is Santa's face. I think that just looks so realistic. I've always been really amazed by that face. So this also has beads for the holly berries. So that was the first time I did beads. The first and only time until I stitched my Mirabilia piece. So, but yeah, that was kind of fun. The next piece I stitched, this was about the fourth piece I stitched, and I don't know if you remember when I talked about how I got started cross-stitching. My wife showed me a bunch of her charts, And there was one chart in particular that I just really liked. I just really liked the picture. And it was that chart that made me want to learn how to cross stitch. And that is this piece, so I'm going to show it to you. It's rather big and it's framed, so we'll see if I can get this in the picture. This is a design by Stoney Creek. It's called Village Skaters. It's in a big leaflet. If you can't find it in a leaflet, I've also found it as an electronic download. I've also found it as an electronic download from Patterns Online, and I'll post a link to that down below in the notes. But this is it. And you'll see that it is a picture of skaters with a village in the background and this house. When I saw this, I just loved how it looked, and I really thought I really loved this place. This is a place that I would really like to visit. That's what made me want to stitch it. I love the skaters, the Victorian skaters. I really love this house. This village in the background is really nice too. One thing about this piece was very, when I started, of course it was huge. This was the biggest piece that I'd ever stitched up to this point. And I got myself into trouble because this is white fabric, and I think it's white Quaker cloth, and all of this snow is white. So I was stitched a lot of white on white. And that turned out to be a real challenge. I think there's nothing worse than stitching white on white fabric. This village was also a challenge because it's stitched with one strand of floss, and I had problems because I was ending off the darker colors and it was showing through the fabric a little bit. So I had some challenges trying to get this to work right as well. And also, the other thing that I should point out is I stitched this in hand. And after I stitched it and before I framed it, I had it framed, I washed it, but the oils from my hands must not have come off, and they've tarnished the white and they've made it really quite discolored. It's something that kind of bugs me when I look at it, is to see that white all yellow. And it's enough that I'm kind of tempted to stitch it over, but I don't know that I can justify stitching it again because it's so huge. This took me a couple of years to stitch the first time, and since then I think I've learned enough that it wouldn't take me that long to stitch again, but it would still take quite a while. So and I have one more piece to show you, and this is another piece that I stitched. I think I kind of mentioned before that I really stitched for a while, and then I got involved. I taught myself how to knit, and knitting kind of turned into my hobby, and I kind of stopped cross stitching. When we moved down here, I got really busy and had other things that happened that made it so I didn't have a lot of time to knit or stitch. And then about 5 years ago, I had an illness and I was hospitalized for about 3 or 4 days, and it took me 3 or 4 weeks to actually recover from that illness. And I just felt so awful that the only thing I could do to take my mind off of feeling awful was to stitch. So I started stitching, and that's kind of what got me stitching again. And this is the piece that I worked on when I was sick. So when I look at this, I think about how sick I was. And this was about halfway finished, and I finished it while I was sick. I had all sorts of time and all sorts of incentive to try to forget how sick I was. So what this is called Merry Christmas A to Z, And it is a design by Deborah Lambein, and it was published by Leisure Arts. Basically what it is it's a Christmas alphabet. You have Merry Christmas across the top, and then you have little pictures for each letter of the alphabet. Like you have an angel, bells, carolers, December 25th, eggnog, Father Christmas, a goose, holly and the ivy, joy, Kris Kringle, lambs, mistletoe, nativity. The nativity is in the middle, which I think is appropriate. Ornaments, presents, quilt, rocking horse, Santa's sleigh, tree or Tannenbaum. Up on the rooftop, reindeer paws. Village, wreath, Xmas, Yuletide, and the Z is a teddy bear snoring. And then there's other little pictures all the way through this. And then this block says, Merry Christmas from A to Z, Merry Christmas to you from me. So I really like this. My wife really likes this. This is her style. She likes this folk arty style. So she was really glad that I stitched this. This is stitched on, I think it's 16 count Aida. I chose that just because I had it, and I thought it would be okay with this sampler piece. I don't mind stitching on Aida. I don't like how coarse it looks on the finished piece. So if I were to do this again, I would do it in linen, but this is fine for what it is, and it's really pretty. This is kind of embarrassing. I had a framer at Michael's convince me to use this wider mat. He's like showed me a preview on the computer and said, look, it looks better with a wider mat than with a narrower one. And so it did look better on the computer, but when I got it home, it was just too wide. So it has a really wide mat. But other than that, I really like it. So that's the other Christmas piece that I've done. Okay, so those two pieces that are framed, we bring them out at Christmas time. The one of the skaters sits above our piano. It's a perfect space for it, and we also have a place to put the Merry Christmas from A to Z. And my wife also has a couple of cross-stitch things that she did before we met that she brings out as well. So Christmas kind of brings out the cross-stitch in our family. So now I want to get into my whips. First of all, let's just talk about my progress a little bit. It's been about a month since I did my last video, and I've had pretty good progress. I'm pretty happy with what I've done. I'll show you my stitch trend just to show you. It's kind of interesting. Here it is. You will see that the number of stitches that I've put in has dropped dramatically. And the reason why it has dropped is that I'm stitching on stuff where there's no negative space, there's no empty spaces. And so that is kind of brought my stitch count down to what we'd say the real stitch count is. So that explains that. The number of days that I stitch has stayed pretty good. The number of days for December, of course, we're only about halfway through December, so that's kind of a prediction. And it has to do with the way that I calculate the numbers of days that I stitch in a month. What I do is I take the number of days in the month, and every time I don't stitch, I subtract one from that. And so so far I've only had to subtract one from there. I don't think that's going to hold out. I am sure that as we get closer to Christmas, that there will be some days when I won't be stitching. But that's kind of where I am right now. I'm really happy with my progress, and I want to show you, I'll talk about a little bit about what I've stitched since you last saw me, and I have to admit that it hasn't been very much. I mean, I've only really worked on a couple of projects. Let's see. The first project that I have worked on, of course, is Autumn Magic, and this is what it looks like. Of course, it's a painting by Randal Spangler that is charted as cross stitch by Heaven and Earth Designs. You've seen this many times. I will insert a picture of what it looked like the last time you saw it here. And I'm stitching this on 25 count Lugana. I'm stitching it over 1. And this is what it looks like now. So you'll see I have not really accomplished all that much. Let me fold this a little bit more. So all I've done is I finished the diagonal that I was on, and that brought me down to this bottom corner of this page. And then this is the top corner of that page, and I started working down here. Yeah, so this is actually fun to stitch when I'm stitching on something where the things are taking shape. This page has turned out to be very difficult for me to stitch because it's just blobs of color. Oh, there are some branches in there, but nothing really exciting to watch. And I got to this point, and you'll see I have this block is partially completed. I didn't even finish the block. And I think part of the reason for that is that I was coming down with a cold at the time, and I just lost motivation to work on it. I kept making mistakes, and by the time I noticed that there's a mistake, a counting error, usually it's too late to pull it out. And usually I can fudge that because, you know, as other people have said, there's so many stitches there that one misplaced stitch isn't going to make a difference. But I was getting really demotivated because I kept making counting errors, and I was it's not affecting the overall look, but it was just like really starting to weigh down on me a little bit. And then I also was really getting the urge to start the Christmas piece that I talked about starting, and so I just kind of gave up on it. Since then, I have thought about picking it back up, but I am still not emotionally ready to tackle it. It's going to have to sit a little while, and maybe in a month or two I'll feel better about starting it. So now we're getting to the other piece that I worked on, and it's a new start. And as I mentioned before, I gave you 5 options, 5 possibilities of a piece that I could start, and I asked for your opinions. And once again, thank you so much for your opinions. I really appreciated that and really enjoyed it. I kind of tabulated all of your results, and I did it in a weighted way so that some of you gave me your first or your second or third choice. And so I weighted the answers to take that into effect. And the winner was Hometown Holiday. And I looked at that, and I looked at starting Hometown Holiday again, and I decided I didn't want to stitch it. Part of the reason for that is because the fabric is so small and they're so small, I'm going to have to stitch it with a hoop. And right now I don't really have a way to stitch two-handed with a hoop, and I just can't go back to stitching one-handed. I have to stitch two-handed. So I am working on fixing that. I may have something to show you in the next little while. So I kind of threw out Hometown Holiday. The second piece that everybody voted for, and the piece that I actually decided to do, was this. I'll pull it out of it. It's The Spirit of Christmas by Lavender and Lace. And this was actually the piece that I was really leaning forward to do. So you guys kind of reinforced my desire to do this. This is what it looks like. Of course, now that I look at this picture and I compare it with what I've stitched, the reds in here are a lot lighter than they are showing up on my picture. But that's not a problem. I really like how this is turning out, and I'm sure you will too. So this is what it looks like so far. And as you can see, I have stitched all of this wreath that comes up through here, and I've got quite a bit of Santa. I have to say, I just really am loving this piece. I love the reds. The reds are so deep and so rich. They're just wonderful. And it might surprise you to know that there's only 3 shades of red in here and in here. This ribbon only has 3 shades of red. Santa has 3 shades of red and 3371. And there are sections where the darkest red is blended with 3371, and I really like that effect. It makes kind of a reddish shadow. I really like that. The fur trim is coming along as well. We're starting to see some of Santa's hair here, so we're up. This is actually getting pretty close to his shoulder right here. And this is the cuff for his sleeve. So I'm getting close to actually seeing one of his hands. And of course, this is just the greens. I love the greens too. The greens in here are so wonderful. So I don't remember who it was, but somebody said they would be interested to see how I tackled the wreath. And I just decided to stitch it diagonally along with everything else. What's going to happen is I'm going to finish Santa, and then I'm going to be stitching just wreaths for a while. So that should be interesting to see. And I have been working on this for probably close to 3 weeks now. And like I say, I've enjoyed it. I have enjoyed it so much. I just love how it's turning out. It just amazes me. There are actually very few colors in here, and to see the 3-dimensional effects that are done with so few colors, it is just wonderful. So that's what I've been working on. I am actually considering, I'll say this. My spreadsheet that I use to track my progress is telling me that if I continue stitching on it, I will be stitching on it until the end of January. And part of the reason why I justified this is I thought, I actually thought I was actually a little bit delusional and thought I can do that in a month, and I'm not going to be able to do it in a month. So I don't want to be working on this into January. So I think, and I've also got an itch to start another one of those 5 projects. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this aside. I think I'm going to start something else tonight. And I think I'm going to. I may lose my nerve, but I want to start something else, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. You can either follow me on Instagram to see what I start, or you can wait for my next video. But I think I'm going to put this away. I really enjoyed stitching him, but I want to start. I want something else, and I think he's going to be put away for a while. It kind of depends on how next year goes. I think I'm going to put him away until we get close to Christmas next year. We'll see. But I plan on doing a year-end video, kind of a recap of my year, and talk a little bit about what I think I'm going to do for next year. And I'll talk more about that later. But anyway, he's been really fun. Okay, so that's basically all that I have to show you. I still enjoy working on just a couple of projects in a month. I've really enjoyed doing that, mostly because of the progress that I've been able to see. And I think I'm going to continue to do that. The only downside with that is I don't work on as many projects and I don't have as much to show you, but I think I can live with that. I'm excited for the new year because I'm going to start concentrating on finishing some of my whips, and I hope that I can get some finishes right at, if not at the beginning of the year, within the first few months. So those are kind of my plans. As you all know, we are getting close to Christmas, and I would like to wish all of you a Merry Christmas. I talked last last month about Thanksgiving traditions that we have, I'm going to tell you about a couple of our Christmas traditions. First of all, my wife has collected Christmas picture books, and she's done that since we first got married, and we have, like, I don't know, I haven't counted them, at least 40, maybe 50 Christmas picture books, and we have all sorts of them. I mean, we have the standards like How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and Charlie Brown Christmas, and Night Before Christmas, and we have lots of books. One of our favorites is called The Three Trees. It's a story about three trees and how they want to be the best and about what happens to them. We love that story. There's also a story about Christmas Oranges, which is about a girl who is sent to a new orphanage. She's an orphan, and because of the flu epidemic in the 1910s, her orphanage was shut down, and she was sent to another orphanage with the man who was in charge of the orphanage was a really mean guy. But the children all got an orange for Christmas because that was a gift that somebody in the town gave them. And she'd never had oranges before. And it talks about how she makes a mistake, and as punishment, she is banned from having her orange. And we like that story too. What we do is every night we read one of these Christmas stories. And when our kids were really young, they kind of fought over who was going to choose what story, because we had each of them they'd take turns choosing a story. And so what my wife does is at the beginning of the month, well, just before December 1st, she wraps she chooses 25 books and she wraps them all up. And then the kids get to choose a book and unwrap it, and we read that book that night. That has turned into a really fun tradition, and we really enjoy doing that. When we read the Christmas Oranges, my wife pulls out one of those chocolate oranges, and we share the chocolate orange. And there's also other things that we do, and we really enjoy doing that. Another kind of tradition that we do is cooking related. My grandmother used to make chocolates, and she used to hand dip chocolates for Christmas. And when I was a teenager, I would stay over at her house and help her dip because she needed help dipping. And in the process, she taught me how to make caramels, and she taught me how to make fudge. She never taught me how to make fondant to dip, and I regret that. I wish I had her recipes. Her chocolates were so wonderful, and every Christmas I just miss them. I miss her chocolates. So she used to make maple nut centers, rum flavored centers, and cherry flavored centers. Not actual cherries, but cherry flavored centers. And I wish I knew how to make those. Anyway, so my wife, we do. So, but anyway, I make caramels, I make fudge. My wife makes some things. She makes like kisses melted on top of those square pretzels with an M&M on top, and she makes. She kind of makes centers with Oreos and cream cheese that she dips. It's not the same as my grandma's, but they're pretty good. You know, she makes all sorts of stuff, and we give candy to all of our neighbors as gifts. So, and to some of our friends who are down here. So that's what we're going to be doing this next week. Is I am sure that my wife is going to start telling me I need to make caramels and fudge. So that anyway, we're excited for that. And of course, we're excited for Christmas. The past 2 Christmases, my son was in Mexico. So this is the first Christmas since he got home that we are going to be all together as a family. And we are looking forward to that. I am looking forward to having Christmas with my entire family here. It will be a very special Christmas for us. I hope that you have a wonderful Christmas, that you enjoy your Christmas traditions, and that you enjoy the season. It is a wonderful season. That's all I have. I want to thank you once again for sticking with me and for watching my video. And once again, feel free to comment or like my videos, or if you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. As I said, I plan on doing another video in a couple of weeks to do a year-end review. That should be fun. If you want to, you can also follow my progress on Instagram. I will also post a link to my blog where I kind of post I post progress on my projects as I work through them. I will post a link to both of those below. And we will close with my usual slideshow. Once again, thanks for watching, and we will talk to you in a little while. Thanks. Goodbye.